the Seattle Seahawks are a better team than they were last year, in my opinion. I think they could win the NFC West. If Brock Purdy isn't amazing in San Francisco, I see a really great opportunity for the Seattle Seahawks to win that division and kind of run away with it. And I love the position Seattle's in with their roster. They've got a really great blend of young, talented guys mixed with stud veterans. It's just an awesome roster top to bottom with a lot of youth, a lot of good veterans. I feel great about this year, and I feel great about the future in Seattle. I do wonder how long Pete Carroll is going to be the head coach in Seattle. He's been there since 2010. He's 71. He's the oldest coach in the NFL, oldest head coach. I wonder what the future looks like for Pete Carroll, and maybe eventually he could, hand the reins to the offensive coordinator, let him become the head coach eventually. I'm not sure. Now, Seattle had 2 first-round picks in 2023. They drafted 2 players that I absolutely love. They drafted number 5 overall, a corner, Devon Witherspoon. That made Seattle's secondary even better. They've got 2 good safeties, Jamal Adams. They've got Quandre Diggs at safety. They've got at corner, Tariq Woolen, and now Devon Witherspoon. I love the secondary in Seattle. So the first-round pick, they nailed it. I love it. Then number 20 overall, Seattle drafted receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State. If you watch any college football, you would know that name and go, oh, wow, that's a really, really talented receiver. And according to my estimation, that gives Seattle 3 really good receivers out wide. They've got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and now Jackson Smith-Njigba. And it really reminds me of the big 3 receivers in Cincinnati. They've got, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Jamar Chase. I think there's a similar parallel between what they got going on in Seattle. And I feel really good about Seattle Seahawks quarterback Geno Smith. He had a breakout year last year. Now he's got another great receiver. On top of that, I think the offensive line should be better. Bettle's not a word. I think the offensive line is going to be better in Seattle. I think that's what happened. Better in Seattle became Bettle. Both tackles in Seattle, right tackle Abraham Lucas and left tackle Charles Cross, are going into their second year in the NFL. They're no longer rookies. I expect them to get better this fall and be better than they were last year. Also, I think one thing you got to talk about, because I saw this happen with Cincinnati, when you've got 3 really good options at receiver, it helps the offensive line too, because it creates mismatches outside. And Geno's going to be able to get rid of the ball way quicker and be under pressure less, just naturally, because he's getting the ball out of his hands a lot faster. And I genuinely believe Seattle's offense is going to be similar to what Cincinnati and Joe Burrow do. A lot of incredible stuff. I just want to see, they'd have maybe a weaker offensive line like Cincinnati did last year. Not a horrible offensive line, better than last year, but still developing at the offensive line. But having that third receiver is going to really make things easier. You're going to see Geno holding on to the ball less, getting rid of the ball more quickly. I think they're going to win a lot of matchups out wide. That's going to be awesome. Now, I think it's also worth mentioning, though, Seattle's offensive line is really young. They don't have a single starter over 26 years old. And so while I think Seattle's offensive line is still a year or 2 away from meeting their peak potential, I think it's really exciting to believe that I think Seattle may have really figured out their offensive line for now and for their future. And for years and years, I harped on Seattle's got to get an offensive line. They got to improve on the offensive line. It feels good to say that finally, again, I think Seattle's got stuff going right on the offensive line. Now, I am really interested to see what happens with defensive end Draymond Jones. Seattle just gave him a new contract that felt like a vote of confidence. He had 6.5 sacks last year. That's interesting, but they must feel like he's doing some really good stuff in camp. They gave him a contract extension, and I'm curious to see what he does this fall. And there's another player I got my eye on in Seattle that's got to kind of prove himself. It's Noah Fant. He's their tight end. He's a former first-round pick in 2019. Seattle got him in the Russell Wilson trade with Denver. He had 50 catches and 4 touchdowns last year. He didn't have a bad year last year. But I'd like to see him really have a breakout year and dominate. And if he can play a role similar to what C.J. Uzomah did as the tight end in Cincinnati when they went to a Super Bowl, that would be a huge, huge victory for me. But he's really talented and I think capable of being like a top-level tight end in the NFL. Who's even more talented, a lot better than what C.J. Uzomah does that year Cincinnati went to a Super Bowl. So I've got high hopes in Seattle, man. Now, despite everything I just said, all the praise, I do think Seattle's going to go 9-8 this year. That's the same record as last year. I know that's going to infuriate Seattle fans. However, I think they're going to be in the mix to win their division. I think 9-8 even could possibly win them their division. As you look around the NFL, there's just so many loaded football teams. There's only so many wins to go around, and they got a tough schedule. But what I will say is 9-8, they make a playoff game, they could make a playoff run. The AFC is significantly stronger than the NFC. I like the way the Seahawks are built. I feel good about this year. I feel good about their future. It's going to be really fun. They play Cincinnati week 6, and that's going to be such an interesting matchup because of how similar I think these two football teams are. Seattle's going to be coming off of their bye week, so they're actually going to have extra time to prepare for that football game, meaning I think Seattle could beat Cincinnati week 6. But the one thing that really hurts them, and part of why Seattle's 9-8 in my predictions, is that I think in the second half of the year, Seattle got monumentally screwed over. There's a 4-game stretch where Seattle goes through an insane gauntlet of, the best teams and the best pass rushes in the NFC. Week 12, Seattle plays the 49ers in Seattle. Then week 13, they play at Dallas. That's another great pass rush. Week 14, they play the 49ers again, this time on the road in San Francisco. And then week 15, they play Philly. That's, those 3 teams, 49ers twice, Philly and Dallas, are the best pass rushes, in the entire NFL. The best teams at getting after the quarterback are going to be playing Seattle 4 weeks in a row. That's not great with a young, inexperienced offensive line. Now, that gauntlet doesn't start until week 12. That's enough time for Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross to really get even better. But it's brutal, man. It's a really tough stretch of games that they might go 0-4 in. I think they're going to beat the 49ers in one of those 2 games. You play a team twice in 3 weeks, you can win that. But that's a really tough stretch of their schedule, and that's part of why Seattle's going to go 9-8. But I think 9-8 making a playoff game doesn't mean they couldn't make a deeper playoff run and maybe even go to the NFC title game or even the Super Bowl. Like there's the NFC is just not as strong as the AFC. You look around, you've got the 49ers are contenders, Dallas, Philly, Detroit. I mean, every team I just listed is a team I feel like Seattle can hang around with. So I think they're kind of a sleeper for maybe I think the word I'm looking for is dark horse Super Bowl team, where I think Seattle could go under the radar, get way better as the year goes on, and by the end of the year hit their stride. It really reminds me of when Cincinnati made a Super Bowl run. I think Seattle's a very similar football team. I don't know that Geno Smith is Joe Burrow, but I love the way the Seahawks are built. I like what they're doing, and there's a lot of potential with this football team. If they get in the playoffs, man, they are going to make a run. I really believe that because I think week 1 to week 18, they're going to get way better and be a different football team. It's even better. So I'm just excited to watch the progress Seattle's going to make on and off the field. I think that I think this organization's headed in such a good direction, and that's not something I said for a long time. So as I look around, I do research, I look at what Seattle's doing. It feels great. And I'm from the Northwest. I'm not a Seahawks fan, but all my friends and family are. And so I find joy in seeing my friends and family happy week to week when they win and their team does well. So I think it's possible that for the first time in a while, Seattle's roster is headed in a great direction. And, they won a Super Bowl years ago in the early Pete Carroll era. They could be headed towards that again. And that's a pretty interesting, cool thing to be able to say about Seattle.